The greatest source of frustration for leaders is when people are underperforming. So, this is a critical question that most leaders have had to face or deal with at one point or another. So, how do you effectively and confidently address and resolve the underperformance of your employees? The first place we're going to start is from a place of love for you as a leader, but there are two things that are within your control that increase your confidence that you have set up your people for success. The first one, the number one foundational piece about employee performance, is clarifying expectations. And I know you may say, you know what, I have hired the best people for the best jobs and there's no reason I have to handhold to make sure that they're successful. I agree. But clarifying expectations is more than just hiring top talent. Clarifying expectations is articulating in as much detail as possible about what you expect, differentiating good from great, also clarifying what is unacceptable. And at the same time, when you talk about the task performance of what people need to do, also clarifying how you want them to do it. They may do a masterful job, but you're not happy about the relationships they burned or the lack of collaboration that they practiced. Think through comprehensively about what makes ideal performance for you, and then communicate those expectations to your team. That is the first step. That is within your control. The second step that is within your control is something to do with the type of culture that you create on your team. If you're the CEO, well, you have a much greater span of control, and to create those expectations around the type of culture you want your organization to have. But even if you have a small team of 5 people, you can create a microcosm, a team culture that is strong enough where people understand that belonging to this team means that there are some expectations that have to be met. Culture, the first 4 letters, cult, it is cult-like when it is strong, but not with this expectation that people can't leave. Of course, they're free to leave. But the reason I point that out is because employee or any human behavior is a function of both a person's personality and the environment. So you can change people's personalities. Hopefully you have hired people who have great attitudes and are wonderful humans and very talented at what they need to do on the job. But the environment, if you have clearly defined expectations of the environment, even if there's variability with different peoples and preferences, the function that their behavior will come from that interaction between their personality and the environment. And when you set very clear, strong expectations of the culture, then the variability in people's behaviors is reduced independent of their personality because the environment has that strong of an impact. So 2 things before we dive into underperformance that are within your control as a leader. One is making sure that you have clarified your expectations comprehensively about what you expect people to do and how you want them to do it. And secondly, being very clear and deliberate about the type of culture that you want to create on the team, and sharing those expectations with your team members, not just when you're onboarding them onto your team, but also on an ongoing basis so that there are no surprises just saved for the end of the year performance appraisal. If you've done those 2 things and still you find that some people are underperforming, let's dive into how do you address that. So the most simple and sticky framework that I can provide you to understand and explore what the source of someone's underperformance can be is an acronym called MARS, M-A-R-S. These are 4 factors, and if you think about an ecosystem of a certain individual at work, their motivation, M, their ability, skills, and competencies, which is the A, R is the role clarity. These 3 things are the ecosystem of one individual in the context of the situation. So what's happening in their environment, whether it's something happening in their personal life or something happening at work, in the work environment. That's the lens I want you to adopt when you're having conversations in figuring out what is the source or sources of someone's underperformance? So I will highly say, given my background in psychology, I have never met a psychologist who can guarantee you that without talking and exploring in consultation with the person, they can figure out what the source of underperformance is. So don't do guesswork. Have a conversation to actually explore what the source of underperformance is. Imagine somebody has all the qualifications necessary to get the job done. They had great references. They have been doing this job for a long time, but you find that they're just not engaged. They're not even putting in the effort. So the expectations that you had set out are not met. And you have this conversation with this person and you say, help me understand what's going on. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, I show up every day. Okay. Showing up, being present does not mean being actually actively engaged at work. So be concrete, be specific in your feedback, and you can talk about what you're observing. I do observe that you come in, you are at your desk, but in terms of getting the project done, I don't get any updates. I understand you're not meeting with all the stakeholders I expect you to meet with. So at this space, I'm not confident we're going to be able to meet the timelines for this project. And their response is, I don't know what you're talking about. I do the best I can, seriously. Like, okay. So that can be a frustrating experience to have that conversation, but emotional intelligence becomes really critical at that time. As frustrating as that is, and the expectation may be, that's not an appropriate answer. I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's talk about what the problem is so that I can fix it for you or help you fix it. But if the person continues to disengage, you can ask specific questions. The first question is around abilities. So do they know who the key stakeholders are? Yes. Okay. Do they understand the expectations of why the solutions need to be co-created in consultation with those stakeholders? Yes. Okay. Then why are you not doing it? What's in your way? Well, I understand that's a nice way to do things, but at the same time, I have so many other things to do. So I can't spend the time talking to all the stakeholders. What you're realizing in this conversation is either issue with the amount of work that this person is experiencing or just lack of motivation. So you can ask that clarifying question. So help me understand. What I'm hearing you say is you have so much additional work that you don't believe that you can squeeze in these meetings, which means that you can't actually consult with the stakeholders. And they say, yeah, okay. Do you need help prioritizing your projects? No, I am okay. I'm trying to manage the best I can. That's not okay. As a manager, it is your job and it is your privilege to be able to share and dictate what workload somebody has. And if they understand what your expectation is, you're offering help with prioritizing the work, and they don't want to take that offer of support. At that point, it becomes pretty clear that it's an issue of motivation. You can say to this person, honestly, I want to be very clear. This is a high priority project. It is not negotiable that these meetings happen with the stakeholders and the solutions that we recommend are co-created with these stakeholders. If the person doesn't take that feedback and is not willing to address it, then that becomes an issue of figuring out how you're going to address that motivation issue. Because it's not about ability. They know what needs to be done. They know how to do it. You have offered to remove the barriers that may be in their way, and they're still not willing to do it. Now, from a motivation perspective, you can call it out and say, I don't see the motivation to actually get this done. So what is the minimum amount of work that you need to put in to get started on prioritizing this today? Help them break down the task into smaller elements and see if you can move them forward. And then don't drop it. As difficult and annoying, perhaps, or frustrating this conversation was, you need to continue to have the conversation. hold the person accountable. If you said there was something that needs to be done today, follow up. Or better yet, ask the person to follow up after they've completed that task. Then, if there's something that needs to be done for next week, follow up again and again and again until they understand that this is your expectation of what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and by when it needs to be done. Other piece I'll comment here is, as frustrating as it can be, continuously go back to this person. It is important that the person is also going to think about, okay, either I can do what you're asking me to do. So I clearly understand this is not acceptable. My performance is not acceptable. So I will change, or I will ask you for help, or I will realize I don't want to be annoyed constantly by being asked, different requests every single day or being followed up on. That's too uncomfortable. I may leave. And then there's a very small proportion who understand that you are not happy with the performance. They understand what needs to be done. They choose not to do it. Well, in that case, you have held them accountable. You have a record of holding them accountable, and you may want to engage HR at that time. And yes, it can be expensive in letting someone go, but you addressing the underperformance of this one person, which is rooted in lack of motivation, definitely influences the rest of the team culture because people are observing. So the stakes are high. It's not just about one person not performing. It's also about other people watching how you treat underperformance and what is acceptable in this environment. It is so important to clarify that you or anyone can't make another person motivated or engaged. It's a myth to think that as a leader, it's your job to motivate and engage your employees. It's a choice. It's a choice that individuals make for themselves. So if you are leading a team member who is underperforming because they're not motivated to do their job, I invite you to relieve yourself of the pressure that you may be carrying, thinking that you can somehow increase this person's motivation. What is within your control is clarifying the expectations, providing supports, creating a culture where people can thrive, and you're removing the barriers that stand in the way of their performance. But if they choose not to be motivated, that is not on you. What you can provide is all those pieces, and if it's not working out, you have the right and the responsibility to make sure that that person is no longer part of the team, because that may be negatively impacting the rest of the culture. In the future videos, we'll talk about the other aspects of the MARS acronym. We talked about motivation. We'll talk about abilities, role perception, and situational factors next. If this was of value to you, please like and subscribe to my channel and continue to be part of this journey. Thank you for watching.